There is an ancient story of a student who went to the master and said, "I pray, I study, I meditate, do my daily rituals. I even fast a little. I live in peace with others. Teacher, what more can I do?" The master rose, lifted his hands, and stretched his fingers out towards the heavens, when suddenly they became like 10 lamps of fire, and then he said, "You can become all flame." Welcome, I am Jareth Tempest, mystic, magician, psychonaut, astronaut, hierophant, all-around seeker of truth, author, full-time weirdo, and host of this show, where we talk about mysticism, the mystical journey, and all that's magical in the universe, everything from spirits to spirituality, while I take you on a magical mystery tour through the inner worlds, and hopefully inspire you to take that next step so that you can become all flame. Okay, well, welcome to this week's show. Again, I want to thank you for being here, for spending your precious time with me. So last time I answered questions that people had sent in, and there was one question that I didn't answer that I started to, and then I actually went back and I deleted it because I realized I was talking about this one topic, and that meant that it deserved its own, episode. And so the question was, what is mysticism and how is it different from magic? And that's a really good question that I am only recently realizing a lot of magicians don't understand what mysticism actually is. So typically what I hear other magicians say about mysticism is that they say that magic is active, whereas mysticism is passive. That's not wrong, but at the same time, it's very incomplete. But let's start there, because mysticism is a more passive way of working, whereas magic, I guess in the way that most people see magic today, and again, I'm going to speak very generally in all of this. So I mean, I understand that there are not just individual exceptions, but there are entire traditions that are exceptions to this. So if what I'm saying doesn't apply to what you believe about magic, don't take it personally. This is just a generalization here, but especially in the groups that I'm more familiar with, people and they use magic because they want things. They want to use magic to make their life better, to be able to make more money, to find love, to keep the chaos, down to a minimum, protect themselves and their families and stuff like that. And that's generally what people want from magic. And then often it is, they want to be able to like overcome grief or help their mind be sharper, things like that. So there are, there's the beginning of that kind of desire for internal work. And what's really telling, I remember, is in the Holy Guardian Angel book that the Gallery of Magic put out. It was almost entirely written as a way to still make your magic stronger, and so that you'll be able to accomplish all these other things, as opposed to the way that, and I guess that's not just the Gallery of Magic. That is kind of how the Holy Guardian Angel is thought of, is that how you get the Holy Guardian Angel, and then your magic is going to be stronger, and you'll be able to accomplish bigger and better things. And it's like that's a complete misunderstanding of what the Holy Guardian Angel is for. So so if magic is, working with, spirits and the supernatural to create change, which is my usual definition of magic, is supernatural causation. If you're causing change with supernatural means, then that's magic. So if that's what what is mysticism? Well, when I first heard the term mystic, there was I started hearing about, like, as I was getting into Catholicism, I started hearing about the mystics and the writings of the mystics. And so I went and I asked someone, well, what's a mystic and how do you become one? And they didn't really have an answer for me. And so I went and I started looking and like just looking in the dictionary. And the dictionary said that a mystic is one who believes that they can receive direct revelation from God or direct communication from God, or whatever, however, that person perceives, divinity. And it's like, well, that's kind of vague because like a lot of people are trying to, receive communication from the spirit world. But I don't think that every tarot card reader, person that practices divination of some sort, is a mystic. So I think that's a little misleading of a definition. But if you really kind of study mysticism, and it almost invariably, doesn't matter what religion or tradition it's coming out of, it's almost entirely about becoming one with God or growing closer to God or divinity or the spirit world, or however that person, whatever the ultimate goal of that person, that tradition is. And it's almost and this is where you can start seeing where all religions kind of break down to the same fundamental thing. It's not in the outer part of the religion where they can all be, where there's all these vast differences, but in the mystical traditions of each religion, you start seeing this pattern of people who spend a lot of time in prayer and often isolation and fasting and stuff like that to deny their self and to get closer to divinity. And that's really what, at its heart, that's what mysticism is. It's getting closer. It's doing whatever it takes to get closer to divinity as you perceive it, or even not even as you perceive it, as it begins to reveal itself to you. I think is more accurate, because none of the religions are right. No tradition has all of the truth. And you start to find that out the more you do these practices and things. It's really fascinating to me how little magicians understand mysticism. And so I keep telling people, and I guess because I came from mysticism first, and then became a magician. There was a lot of information I had that others didn't. I didn't realize that until very recently, how much of that is true, and how much of magic is trying to be mystical. It's very, especially like with ceremonial magic, I really feel like it's mysticism for very analytically minded people. It's like they try to make it so complicated that their brain almost short circuits. It's so complicated, their mind short circuits, and there's like a gap in their thought, and they have a mystical moment, which is that's what, and that's one of it's almost like a Zen koan, where basically you state a paradox, like what is the sound of one hand clapping? Well, it's an impossible thing. There is no thing. But by contemplating something impossible, a paradox like of that thing, it's going to create the goal is to hopefully create a gap in your thinking. There's a moment of transcendence that you have, and then in that moment, in that gap, that's when you find divinity is in that space, that emptiness. It's one of the core mystical practices is to try to find silence, and not just silence on the outside, but silence on the inside. And that's what the different forms of meditation are all trying to eventually reach, is this inner silence, even if it only lasts for half a second, just because that's all for most people, they're never going to get more than a few seconds of true emptiness of thought. People that practice more and more, and devoted their life to it, they're going to get more and more of that. But, even them, it's not like they're, the whole time they're meditating, that their mind just blanks out, and like, for, hours and hours, they're thinking nothing. That's just inhuman. And I don't think that there are very many people who have achieved that level of practice. And I think that a lot of people quit meditation because they're trying to compare themselves to that, when in most people it's only going to be a few seconds, and that's really all you need sometimes. That's kind of getting ahead, though. We're starting to get into the practices, but the point of it, though, is you find that silence, and in that silence you recognize, oh, there's God, there's that divine power that's there. And that's where you really find your true power and authority, your magical power and authority. It comes from your connection with the divine. The closer you are to that ultimate divine power, the more you find it within yourself, the more the spirits are going to recognize that divinity within you, and that's what they're going to obey. They're not obeying you. They don't care about you. I mean, some of them might care, but in general, you're summoning something that doesn't know you. They don't care about you. Why are they going to listen to you? Because whenever they see you, they're going to see that divinity within you. And if they can't see that, then they're not going to listen to you, and they're not going to do what you want. This is why I don't think you can be a magician without being a mystic. There's got to be a both. You've got to do both. And we sometimes hide the word mysticism and call it inner work, or just like tell people to meditate. But really, you've got to be a mystic, and there's a lot of mysticism within our magical world. The tree of life is that's an entirely mystical thing, as you're trying to work your way up that tree and getting closer and closer to divinity. That's a mystical journey. When I was talking about the Kabbalah, and even before that with the Merkava was entirely about going on a mystical journey to your core, to where you're descending within yourself to find divinity. Going through the different levels of heaven, but within yourself to find that divinity within you. So it's in our practices. That's like, it's within the Golden Dawn. It's like, and getting in touch with your holy guardian angel is not about being more powerful. It's about getting in touch with that, because your holy guardian angel is the part of you, or it's the entity within you that is basically where you hear the voice of the divine. Divinity doesn't actually have its own big booming voice from the sky. What you hear is that angel speaking to you on behalf of divinity. And so getting in touch with it is not so much about like becoming superpowered. It's about, now you have a direct line to the divinity within you. And that's where your power really comes from. So, getting in touch with your holy guardian angel, the tree of life, and Enochian, the aethers, and working the aethers, like Crowley did in the Vision of the Voice. That's absolutely just pure mysticism. That's not, there's very little magical about that. That's a mystical process. And then just doing, all of the inner work and what people call shadow work and things like that. All of that is really more of a aspect of mysticism than it is outright magic. I mean, it's still supernatural causation. It's just you're causing the change within you. And really, it's not a change. What you're doing in mysticism is you're clearing stuff out of the way. The core practice is meditation, and as you meditate, your unconscious mind is going to start moving things out of the way. The clutter of your mind is gonna get cleaned up, and then you can be a little bit more active and work on certain parts of your personality. But more and more, what I'm finding is not that you're changing or transforming anything. You're unlocking doors. There's all these doors that have been closed because of the way you were raised and the programming you received, be it through your religion or just society and advertising and the values that the world around you has instilled in you. All of these things can get in the way, and anything that or even in the course of us being wounded and hurt by others and heartbreak, we can build up barriers and walls, and part of being a mystic is breaking those down and unlocking those doors and letting that love through. And one of the big things that usually has to happen on that mystical journey is, at some point you have to receive what they call the divine wound, but you have to be hurt. Something has to hurt you enough that you realize you're not that badass that you think you are, that maybe you can't do it all on your own, and maybe you need some supernatural help. And you start to realize that, let's just put it frankly, I'm kind of, I'm kind of a fuck up. Maybe I should turn to something bigger than me to help guide me on this. And it's also opens you to compassion, because you then realize, how bad it sucks to be hurt. And then you see other people out there and you want to ease their suffering because you don't want to see that in the world anymore. I mean, and that's what the word innocence, it means unwounded. And so, you lose your innocence when you've received that wound, and then there's no going back to being innocent again. And there's usually there's 3 steps on the mystical journey, and you might recognize them. And it starts off with what they traditionally call the purgative phase, and this is where you're really struggling, not struggling, but you're kind of struggling with yourself and with everything to sort your life out, where you're trying you're really doing that work to get rid of what the world has done to you. And traditionally most mystics were usually like monks and nuns and stuff like that. They go to live in a monastery, and that purgative phase is that phase where they're struggling to gain control of themselves, to be able to live such a disciplined life and stuff like that. But you can still, it's not necessarily entirely about that. It's about that inner struggle to finally, gain control of your mind and your desires and your that inner world and that struggle. And anyway, that's the purgative phase, is you're purging a lot of that negativity through you. And then usually at that point, there's a kind of a it's usually, I don't know, this is where you can maybe start talking to your holy guardian angel once you reach this kind of that transformative phase between this one and the next. Sometimes you have what they call a dark night of the soul, which is where usually it's actually, this is like more of the dark night of the sense anyway. It's like, but there's a growing process here, and it's almost like you've had a lot of divine help and you didn't even know it at this point, and you feel like you're hot shit, and then all of a sudden it's like the rug gets pulled out from underneath you. You don't feel that divine help anymore, and everything goes really super dry, and it becomes work. Everything spiritual becomes work. And then sometimes there's it can be a depression can go with it, and maybe even illness, but that's not really what it's about. And I think that our more modern usage of that phrase has focused on that type of thing, when it's not really what it is. It's a spiritual dryness is the main point. Anyway, you get through that, and then you get to what they call the illuminative phase. And the illuminative phase is where you've kind of got things under control, and now you're just working on that, growing your relationship. And it's like, this is the one that will probably take, the rest of your life. And then to ultimately, there's union. And union is exactly what it says it is. And this is one of the things that is most confusing. And again, this is something a lot of magicians make fun of mystics, because they want union with God. And a lot of magicians mock that, saying they want apotheosis, where they just become God and they float away and they're totally subsumed by divinity, and they don't exist anymore. And yes, that is what some traditions believe happens at that point, where you become one with divinity, and therefore if there's that oneness, that separation between you and the divine is gone, and you are absorbed back in. That's more of an Eastern idea. The Western one is what they call theosis, and it's most strongly talked about in like the Greek Orthodox Church, but it's not uniquely theirs. The idea though is that yes, you are united with God on a deep level, but at the same time, you're not lost within it. You become who you were meant to be, who you uniquely are, but without all of the bad programming and stuff. Once that's all been removed and you are who you were meant to be, then that's that ultimate level. And this is sort of really where I fall. This is at least where you can reach within this lifetime. I don't think that you can, within life, be fully united with God. There's still, just being in a fleshy body is going to make that really difficult. And so I think theosis is it's more doable. I think it's probably a better way to put it. It's a more achievable goal. And so, yeah, it's not about being lost. It's about being who you really are. And without all of the bullshit in the way, and all the posturing and posing and self-deception. Because that's one of the biggest things with all of this, is to you not only be honest with others. We should always try to be honest with others, but to be honest with yourself, to quit lying to yourself about who and what you are. To be very brutally honest about, who and what you are. And then once you've, really seen yourself, like really seen yourself, to forgive yourself and for being who you are, and all of the ugly that is there, along with all the beauty, and to accept, because a lot of times we don't even want to accept the beauty that's there because of whatever's we've been told our whole life. And so it's not just about the bad, it's also about the good, and really, and then just accepting and loving who you are, regardless of all of the other stuff, and then to work on trying to be better. And that's really the heart of the journey. And it's not easy, and it's a long path, and there's a lot of tests and trials along the way, and things will be taken from you, and you're not gonna like it. One of the things that you have to do is, in some ways, you have to decrease so that the divinity within you can increase. And it's a bit of a paradox with everything I was just saying about being who you were supposed to be and who you were meant to be and all of that, and who you really are, but also letting stuff go. But it's about letting go of all that baggage that we don't need. And sometimes we don't want to let the baggage go. Sometimes we cling to it and it has to be taken from us. That's just the reality, the way it is if you're going to do this type of thing. And I think that Magick can help this whole process. And I think that they were always meant to go together. And it shouldn't never have been separated. And this is, I think, one it was difficult for me because I didn't realize that it was so separated. And it really didn't even dawn on me until I was reading Frater Acker's, one of his latest books, Holy Heretics. And he's talking about Christian mysticism in it. And he's acting like, a lot of this stuff, he's like, I mean, obviously it's not, he doesn't think it's new. He's just like, it's new, but at the same time, he can't accept it. And he has to keep, because of, his own experiences and stuff. He's taken on a very anti-Christian kind of mindset, maybe not anti-Christian as much as like anti-church history and the things that people have done in the name of Christianity that really have nothing to do with Christianity, like burning the witches and stuff like that. But because of that history, he struggles to want to even accept some of these things, and he has to constantly humanize or make things ugly. He wants to point out these people are going off in the desert and they're not washing and taking care of themselves. And it's like, yeah, we get that. That's part of, yeah, we get it. But he really wants to point stuff like that out. It's like there's just a part of him that can't fully just let these people be. I don't know. I've noticed a weird. Well, he has to point out their flaws in ways he doesn't have to point out the flaws of certain other historical groups that he's worked with. Anyway, it's an interesting reading him. I was like, oh, he doesn't even fully get it. And not just that he's pointing out the flaws of people. Obviously, we need to always point out, where someone is going astray in different areas, and not try to make anyone out to be above criticism. That's not what I mean. But it just, there's like, and as you read the writing, it's like, yeah, he's not quite getting it. If he's not getting it, oh my God, that means that, because he really, I mean, I love him. He's like one of my favorite occult authors. And if he's not getting it, then I doubt very many people are. And that's really sad. And it's interesting. And it just brought everything into focus, that how misrepresented the mystical journey is in magical circles. And so, yeah, I want to try to work on that. And I guess this is almost, things have been lined up. Like again, I was on the mystical path a good decade before I started any kind of, real magical practice. So yeah, I think this is kind of where my work is definitely heading. Well, not exclusively, of course, but it'll definitely be a big part of what I do from now on, is trying to educate the occult community on mysticism and trying to help them, because it's such a vital part, because I know I'm not the only one that sees this. A lot of people see it, that just really you start getting way more success out of your magic whenever you are doing some sort of mystical practice and are working to get closer to divinity. Because again, and I can never say this enough, that your power and authority come from that relationship to the divine. And what we've been even getting in the spirit interviews and stuff, it definitely reflects that your higher self is something that you develop, and it is your direct connection with divinity, and you have to birth that and to grow that, and the mystical practices that are going to be the things that do that help you, reach the, if you think of it as like a tree growing up towards, towards heaven, or if you, more comfortable with thinking of roots descending down into the earth, either way, they've got to grow. I don't want to keep going on this. I've noticed that people don't listen to the episodes if they're much longer than 30 minutes. So I want to kind of keep it short so that people aren't turned off and don't listen to this, because I think it's an important thing. So, but the main thing, that you can do to start practicing some is, to start this mystical journey is to start practicing some form of meditation. The most basic that is the just sitting still with your back straight. Try to breathe from your stomach and not from your shoulders, and pick a phrase to use as a mantra, and just repeat that to yourself over and over. Sit for 20 minutes, repeat it, and every time you start to think, just label your thought, I'm thinking, and then go back to saying your mantra. You're going to do that probably several times a second, and it's fine. That's how everyone starts. It doesn't matter. That's just, and you're never going to get that much better. That's just the truth. It's just the process, and of doing it, and the discipline of sitting through it is the work. But if that's a little too intense, there are different, even just path working with spirits is a form of meditation, and focusing your imagination on, the different images and stuff. All of that is a form of meditation, and will help you, and getting the angels and spirits and stuff to help you will always be a good help. So yeah, just kind of start practicing that, and and prayer, just talking to divinity. You don't have to, I guess we can almost have a whole other episode just on prayer, but as a spiritual practice, as a magical practice. But yeah, it's a fine thing it's okay to pray for what you want, and then you can do a ritual for it. It's like it opens a place within you of it. Because it's giving and receiving, and it's being humble while at the same time being powerful. It's that. It's hard to that I don't know. It's almost a paradox, but that it's being able to do both of those things that gives you more power to give and to receive, and to and then that's just how it works. And so it's just it's more of a natural state. It's like you have to, if you just want to think of it as asking the universe for what you want, and then trying to go get it. And, and if you work that process, then you're going to be more likely to get it, I think is the way to put it. So yeah, that's mysticism in a nutshell, and how it's a little bit different from your typical magical journey. So if you like this, follow me and tell other people about it, share it, and if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. So, all right, I guess I will see you next week, and thank you again so much for being here. Bye-bye.